With a looming government shutdown, top congressional Democrats have requested a meeting with President Trump because they say Republican leaders are refusing to engage in bipartisan negotiations. We're joined now by NPR senior national political correspondent Mara Liasson. Good morning, Mara.
Good morning.
So it looks like Senate Democrats and Republicans can't even agree on a short-term spending bill. So where does that leave us?
It leaves us looking at a possible government shutdown because it doesn't look like the Senate has come to any agreement. They can't pass a spending bill without Democratic votes. And Democrats say they won't agree to a bill that doesn't include an extension of Obamacare subsidies and a rollback of some of those Medicaid cuts that were in the One Big Beautiful Bill. The president has said originally that he didn't want to negotiate with Democrats, but now he says he'd love to meet with them, but he doesn't think it will come to much.
Well, on Friday, U.S. Attorney Eric Siebert of the Eastern District of Virginia resigned. He didn't say why he stepped down, but President Trump wanted him out, right?
That's right. President Trump wanted him out because he had wanted Siebert to go after New York Attorney General Letitia James for mortgage fraud. Letitia James successfully prosecuted Trump in New York. But Siebert's office, after months of investigation, didn't find enough evidence to file charges. So he was pressured to resign. Trump actually said he didn't resign, I fired him. But now, in an extraordinary post on Truth Social, Donald Trump has ordered Pam Bondi, his attorney general, to prosecute his political opponents, including James, but also former FBI Director James Comey and California Democratic Senator Adam Schiff. Trump claims they are all, quote, guilty as hell. And this is an escalation of Trump's decision to use the Department of Justice as the instrument of his campaign of revenge and retaliation. He promised he'd do this. He campaigned on this. And he has overturned a long-standing norm that presidents shouldn't interfere in law enforcement investigations. His critics say this is an attack on the rule of law.
That is extraordinary. We have to say that. The FBI Director Kash Patel faced questions from the House Judiciary Committee on things like the firing of dozens of FBI agents and the release of the Jeffrey Epstein files. Specifically, Democratic lawmakers kept reminding Patel of all the times he said the FBI should release all of the files. But now that he's FBI director, he's not doing that, right?
No, he's not doing that. And there have been a lot of top officials like Kash Patel or Tulsi Gabbard or Robert F. Kennedy Jr. who have been called on the carpet to various degrees by Congress in hearings like this. But I don't think it matters much as long as Trump has their back. And the big question for me that came out of the Kash Patel hearings is, beyond Kash Patel's future, is the future of the Epstein story and how much staying power it has, and whether now, with everything else that's going on, it will kind of be pushed out of people's attention span.
Well, I mean, it has some staying power in the UK. The activists were projecting images and news clips linking Trump to Epstein onto Windsor Castle during Trump's visit there last week. But while the president can't control criticism of him overseas, he is trying to do that here in the U.S., isn't he?
He certainly is. He's using every power at his disposal, and some powers that experts say the Constitution does not put at his disposal, to dominate or destroy institutions he feels are his opponents, whether they're law firms or universities. This week it was the media. On Air Force One, he told reporters that the television networks, quote, only give me bad publicity. I think maybe their licenses should be taken away. We saw Jimmy Kimmel's late-night comedy show get pulled hours after FCC Chair Brendan Carr suggested that if ABC's affiliates didn't drop the show, they might lose their licenses. We also saw the Pentagon now prohibiting reporters from obtaining any information, including unclassified information, without prior Pentagon approval, or else they'll lose their press credentials. So this kind of crackdown is getting criticism from Trump's own supporters, like Tucker Carlson and Ted Cruz, who say it's an attack on the First Amendment that could backfire.
That's NPR's Mara Liasson. Thank you so much, Mara.
You're welcome.
The Trump administration is relishing a win after ABC caved to pressure and suspended late-night host Jimmy Kimmel. The suspension highlighted FCC Chair Brendan Carr's aggressive approach to regulating broadcasters. Last week, he raised the possibility of revoking broadcast licenses over political speech.
I mean, look, we can do this the easy way or the hard way. these companies can find ways to change conduct and take action on Kimmel, or there's going to be additional work for the FCC ahead.
Anna Gomez, the only Democrat on the FCC, spoke to Here and Now's Peter O'Dowd on Friday.
The FCC does not have the legal authority, the constitutional right, or the ability to revoke a license just because the president does not like what that broadcaster is broadcasting.
But all the political pressure from President Donald Trump down to Carr may be enough to get them the results they want. Andrew J. Schwartzman is a longtime nonprofit and public interest telecommunications lawyer. He's also currently senior counsel at the Benton Institute for Broadband and Society. Welcome to the program.
Hi, how are you, Aisha?
I'm good. Now, you've spent your entire career working on cases that involve the FCC. Just how unusual are Carr's comments, and can you put them into context?
Well, they are unprecedented. As Commissioner Gomez has said, he is making threats that he can't fulfill. He simply cannot revoke or otherwise take away broadcast licenses for this kind of thing at all. But he can make broadcasters' lives miserable, and he can cost them some money in legal fees. But most importantly, they need certain regulatory changes from the FCC, and the power of these threats is to coerce broadcasters into doing what Brendan Carr and Donald Trump want. It's shameful and it's unprecedented.
Well, I mean, so much of this past week was about rhetoric. How does having the FCC commissioner saying these things make a difference if they're not actually following through?
Well, this is not alone. All year long, Brendan Carr has been tormenting broadcasters with bogus investigations and fake allegations that cost them time and money. So this is part of a pattern. If he hasn't followed through on this, he's attempting to follow through on other things. He won't succeed in any of them, but it's his power to withhold approval of things that broadcasters want that gives it juice. And to look at this particular incident in isolation, or to imagine that it would have played out differently, overlooks that this is exactly the game plan that Chairman Carr is following.
Well, you say that they're not going to win. Why are they on shaky legal ground from what you see?
First of all, Communications Act expressly prohibits censorship. Second of all, there is no violation of any FCC rule that's alleged, and therefore going after a license for a revocation is literally impossible. On that basis, you have the general requirement that broadcasters serve in the public interest, but that by definition does not allow involvement in content. So what you really have here is an unconstitutional act of jawboning, which the Supreme Court has repeatedly said you can't do.
So the broadcast business is struggling. Viewership is down, on-air broadcasts, ABC, NBC, CBS. But does that mean that the influence of the FCC is also on the wane?
In some ways, the FCC is more powerful than ever. Broadcasting is a highly profitable business, but it's a declining business. And in order to continue the level of authority and power that they have, broadcasters are looking for regulatory relief from the FCC, which makes it all the more interested in satisfying Brendan Carr's wishes and also in paving the way for the rest of the administration, including the Justice Department, to accommodate them.
So, on Thursday, Carr, mentioned ABC's The View, and it seems like he has The View in his sights. What authorities could he have there?
He has less than none. He has no power to address the content of individual programs. The Communications Act specifically says that there is no power of censorship.
Well, let's talk about the FCC down the line, because on Friday, Senator Ted Cruz, he raised some concerns about Carr's comments and what would happen if a future Democratic administration took the same actions.
They will silence us, they will use this power, and they will use it ruthlessly.
It's rare to hear Senator Cruz out of step with the Trump administration. What do you make of what he said? And are you concerned that we've maybe passed a point of no return?
I share the fear. This is a abuse of power in the hands of anyone. And I would fear any Democratic FCC chair who tried to do the same thing that Brendan Carr is doing. It's unprecedented. No Democrat or Republican in the past has tried. But if these tools were available and they're not, it would really be a horrifying threat to democracy.
That's Andrew J. Schwartzman. He's a longtime nonprofit and public interest telecommunications lawyer. Thank you so much for joining us.
I'm glad I could help.
Students returned to classrooms at Annunciation Catholic School in Minneapolis on Tuesday for the first time since a gunman killed 2 children and injured 21 other students and parishioners at a mass there. Tuesday was also the day voters filled the seat left vacant by the murder of Minnesota lawmaker Melissa Hortman. Speaker Emerita Hortman was shot in her home earlier this summer. The same night, State Senator John Hoffman was also shot and injured in his home. Now Governor Tim Walz says he wants a special session of the legislature to address the state's gun laws. Republican Lisa Demuth is Minnesota's current House Speaker, and she joins us now. Welcome.
Thank you, Aisha. Good to talk with you.
And on the other side of the Capitol and the aisle is State Senator Erin Murphy, a Democrat. Welcome to you as well.
It's good to be with you.
So for both of you, so much has happened in your state in the last few months. How are you both doing?
In Minnesota, that is such a common question that we get. And I fail to come up with the correct answer. I don't know that there is a right answer, but I think as we continue to heal, we are resilient, but it is a very painful time.
And Senator Murphy?
I think the best answer I can give is I'm doing well enough today. And I'd served with Speaker Emerita Hortman for all of my career, and she was well known and deeply loved. The recovery for all of us is going to take some time.
Speaker Demuth, I know you had a special and a close relationship with Melissa Hortman as well.
I did. When I first came into the legislature in 2019, Speaker Emerita Hortman was the speaker then. She is the only one that I served under until we came back this year in the tie and I became Speaker of the House. But our working relationship really developed in 2023 when my party was in the minority. Speaker Hortman at the time, they were in the full majority in the state. And yet as a new minority leader, she reached out to me and said, I want to meet weekly with you. And she didn't need my votes, but it was important to her that we would develop a working relationship. Even though we didn't agree politically, we found common ground. What could we get done, or kind of where we were both at on issues, but also things outside of that, her love for gardening, her love for dogs, common things talking about just being parents. And so that relationship and the way she led as a leader has really formed the way I do my work as Speaker of the House now.
Talking about working across the aisles, like if Governor Walz does call a special session on gun violence, what realistically could be accomplished?
The way that we are looking at it in the House, specifically House Republicans, is it's broader than that. We have to look at mental health. We also have to look at keeping our schools safe and then punishing criminals. There was a tragedy in my community, in my schools in 2003, and I had children in the building. And so I don't just say this as an elected official or Speaker of the House. It is a much broader issue of mental health and how we treat each other.
And just to follow up on that, so your own children were affected by a school shooting, and it was in Cold Spring, Minnesota in 2003?
That is correct. I had 2 high school students in the building at the time, and then I had 2 elementary students that were just across the parking lot. And so as a family and as a community, we've lived that. So I understand it from a little bit different perspective, and that's what I bring into the work that we do in the legislature also.
Did someone die in that shooting?
There were 2 students that lost their lives, one that day and one just a short 2 weeks later.
Well, Senator Murphy, what do you think the approach should be?
My background, I'm a nurse, and come to this discussion through a lens of prevention and well-being and health. And with Speaker Demuth and the governor, went to the funeral for Fletcher, one of the children killed in Annunciation, and then went to the funeral for Harper, a little girl who was killed in Annunciation, and feel the presence of their stories and their grief and their loss as I think about the work in front of us. We can't go into a special session and not talk about assault weapons. They are weapons of war intended to harm, destroy, and kill in rapid fire. And what we saw happen at Annunciation to those families and to those kids was someone standing outside with a high-powered weapon, shoot and harm so many people in a short amount of time. And those children will tell you the story of what they knew. They knew because they'd been through drills that they needed to lay on top of the youngest kids to protect them. They knew what to do. And that by itself, to me, says our politics, something I believe so deeply in, our ability in a self-governing America to solve our hard problems. Our politics are failing right now on this issue.
I do feel like what we're seeing in the conversation we're having right now is what seems to happen over and over again after shootings. Republicans saying harden the schools, focus on mental health, and then you have Democrats saying focus on the type of weaponry. Like, how does anything get done?
We don't agree necessarily on this issue, but I do believe that it is possible for us to find a path forward. As we negotiated probably one of the hardest budgets that I ever have back in June, that was a hard-fought compromise, and we all gave things up. But we got our job done because we all agreed that we shouldn't fail Minnesota.
In the House right now, we are tied 67-67. And what that has done this year is it has required that we work together in a bipartisan fashion. And what that meant is we have co-chairs in every single one of our committees. So Democrats and Republicans have already proven this year that through deliberative legislative action, we can get things done. They're not fast conversations. They're not do this and hope it works, but really, really deliberative.
I want to talk about the heated and divisive political climate we're in right now. I mean, each side is calling the other side evil. We have to be honest about that.
What I feel alarmed about, Aisha, is the thing that I watched happen on the day that Melissa and Mark were assassinated and John was wounded. And again on the day of the school shooting, and again on the day that Charlie Kirk was killed. There were efforts in social media to drive a narrative and ascribe blame for what happened from a partisan perspective. And it feels like the extremism that is experienced around the world, it's finding its way into the day-to-day work of legislating. A number of my colleagues, but one in particular, has experienced over the course of this last weekend a number of death threats coming not just from Minnesota, but from other parts of the country, and they are crude and violent, in-writing threats. That doesn't serve democratic governing at all. We can't lead in America if we are operating under that kind of fear. Yes, we disagree, and we should be able to say that. Yes, we have free speech rights, and we should speak what we believe. But we shouldn't turn it into such a personal attack that it becomes weaponized.
Speaker Demuth, do you feel that partisanship has blinded people to others' humanity?
In Minnesota, with the hard things that have happened, one of the things that we've talked about with some of my colleagues is people express their grief differently, and we need to give grace in grief. As far as the partisanship of politics, we have to work together and get things done for the greater good. And it takes each one of us individually to try to tone down the way we speak or speak more with kindness, even while there's a strength in getting things done.
I think Americans need to start looking up and seeing each other again, because the path forward for our country, every time we've been in a bad corner like this, is with each other. And I have faith that when we see each other for who we are as people, we will find our way forward.
That's State Senator Erin Murphy. Also, we heard from Lisa Demuth, Speaker of the Minnesota House. Thanks to you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.